Hey guys, welcome back to the Boneyard. Today we're doing a deep dive into a throwback horror movie I absolutely loved when I was a kid, Darkness Falls, featuring the vengeful spirit, the Tooth Fairy. This monster's shrieks and howls, along with her porcelain mask, absolutely scared me to death when I was a kid, making this a classic for me, even if it is a little corny now. Although it hasn't aged perfectly, it does seem to share a lot of connective tissue with the way that The Conjuring, Blumhouse, and most of today's modern horror movies are made, with dozens of jump scares and some very tropey horror movie tropes. So let's take a look at the story details, as well as the origins of Matilda Dixon, aka the Tooth Fairy. Starting right off the bat with a heavy exposition dump. 150 years ago, in the village of Darkness Falls, a local woman, Matilda Dixon, was adored by the town's children. Matilda was nicknamed the Tooth Fairy because she would give children gold coins when they lost their baby teeth. One night, her house mysteriously caught fire and she was horrifically burnt, especially her face. After this, she would only ever go out at night because the sunlight was too painful on her damaged skin, and she always wore a porcelain mask so that no one would ever look upon her damaged face. One day, 2 of the town's children went missing, and the townsfolk immediately blamed Matilda, so they ripped off her mask and hanged her, harsh. The next night, the children returned unharmed. So the town killed an innocent old lady. Okay. Now legend says she visits the town's kids when they lose their last baby tooth, and if you look at her while she's creeping, she'll kill you. A kind of curse, her apparently saying before being hanged, "What I took before in kindness, now I'll take in revenge." Well, I always love it when a horror movie tells me all the very specific rules and origins right up front, leaving nothing to be discovered. We flash forward to the 90s, young Kyle pulling his presumably last baby tooth out in the school bathroom. That night at home, Kyle's mom urges him to ask Caitlin to the school dance before tucking him in. He sees a shadow fly by his window. Close your eyes, it's a tooth fairy. Nah, it's Caitlin. She enters through the window and invites him for a late night swim at the quarry. He declines, but the two agree to go to the dance together and share their first kiss. Kat notices Kyle's mouth is bleeding, ew, and asks him if it's his last baby tooth, and he says it is. She places his last baby tooth under his pillow and reminds him, when the Tooth Fairy comes, don't peek, and slinks back out his window. As Kyle sleeps, we hear some eerie screeching noises approaching him. He wakes up suddenly, hearing some terrified strained moaning and scratching around his bedroom as we see many unnaturally deep, pitch-black shadows moving about his bedroom. He tries to relax and go back to sleep, but there is definitely something moving around, gasping deeply in the shadows. Kyle is frozen by fear, staring intently into the dark, and all I can think is, better not peek, dude. He sees movement and yanks the sheet over his face. As soon as he does, the shadow seemingly swoops over him and lets out a low screech. As we start to realize the Tooth Fairy's real and you definitely shouldn't peek, the room goes silent as Kyle hyperventilates under the sheet. He reaches out and grabs a flashlight and slowly pulls the sheets down, and as soon as his eyes are uncovered, he realizes he's face to face with the Tooth Fairy, with the porcelain mask and everything. And Kyle's realizing, man, those local legends were super accurate and I shouldn't have peeked. He lets out a scream and wakes his mom, who starts to rush down the extremely long, creepy hallway. Stopped halfway by Kyle, cowering in the bright lights of the bathroom. He tells her he's sorry, but he peeked, and that someone is in the house, urging his mom to stay in the light as she goes to investigate. The mom enters the bedroom and everything seems normal, but as soon as she tells Kyle there's nothing to be afraid of, the Tooth Fairy snags her, hearing the ripping and tearing of her claws. The door slams as Kyle watches on in terror. Yeah, I'm sure this totally isn't gonna scar him for life. Now, Miss Matilda moves in to stalk Kyle, who's locked himself in the bright, safe bathroom. He may be addicted to peeking, but he's a quick learner when it comes to staying in well-lit areas. The Tooth Fairy is able to bust the door in, but is kept out by the bright fluorescent lights, screaming in anger as Kyle goes into shock. The next morning, as the authorities are wheeling the mom's body away, they think Kyle killed his mom, and ship him off to the mental hospital. We flash forward 12 years. In a hospital wing, a doctor informs a now grown-up Caitlin that her little brother Michael has nyctophobia, better known as night terrors, which apparently is very common for children in this area, and according to all the tests they've ran, there is nothing wrong with the boy, though he's barely slept for weeks. We then see Kyle's sparse garage-like apartment in Vegas, an open floor plan, completely painted white and rigged up to be covered by lights, as he reloads his many flashlights with fresh batteries, then downing several medications, revealing that he is on antipsychotics and still very traumatized by what happened to him and his mother 12 years ago. Dude, you shouldn't have peeked. Now Caitlin calls Kyle after trying for a while to track him down, and tells him what's going on with her little brother. She reveals that basically he is showing all all the signs that Kyle explained after the thing with his mom happened. He asks if Michael is experiencing night terrors, and she says yes, then asking him how he got over them. He replies, "I didn't," as we see his wall is covered in art depicting the Tooth Fairy's porcelain mask. Kyle arrives at the hospital with a duffel bag full of flashlights. The man came prepared, finding Michael hiding behind the bed. Kyle introduces himself to Michael, and the two become fast friends, probably bonding over both seeing a terrifying monster that no one else believes in. Kyle gives Michael a powerful flashlight after some empty reassurances that there is nothing to be afraid of, but Michael tells him, "You've seen her too," then telling him sometimes he thinks about turning off all the lights and letting her take him, that would be easier than being so scared all the time. He then looks Kyle dead in the eyes and says, "She's gonna kill me, you know." Damn, this kid is based. Kyle again reassures him that his sister won't let anyone hurt him, just as she enters the room. The two long-lost friends embrace and catch up. Kat finally asks Kyle the burning question, "What happened to you the night your mother died?" Her specific wording here is showing us that she never fully believed that Kyle killed her. Kyle becomes uncomfortable as she starts listing off Michael's symptoms, asking, could it be the same thing? Kyle shuts her down with a stern no, but immediately changes his tune when she shows him all of Michael's art depicting the same ghostly white mask renditions, just like the ones at Kyle's place. He asks if Michael has recently lost a tooth, and she looks at him incredulously, and tells him the Tooth Fairy was just a story to scare them as children, as a dejected Kyle gets up to leave, apologizing, and saying this was a mistake. But before he can skip town, their dorky childhood friend, now grown-up lawyer Larry, insists they go out for a drink. Kat passes, as she has to stay back at the hospital to take care of her scaredy cat little brother. I'm just kidding, I'm sure she's probably a good sister, just thinks he has some serious mental illness going on. We pick up in a dive bar, with Larry insisting on buying Kyle a beer, though Kyle has said several times he doesn't drink. Kyle seems to be extremely uncomfortable with the lighting situation, and we realize that he is constantly vigilant about the light level and time of day. At the bar, several locals seem to be getting worked up over the fact that the kid who killed his mother is back in town. And as Kyle starts seeing shadows flash by in the background, he realizes the Tooth Fairy is here with them even now, waiting for her chance to snatch up the peeker that got away. Loudmouth Larry presses on relentlessly about Caitlin, asking Kyle what he does now, telling him how big of a mess he left behind and is generally insufferable. Luckily, Larry is interrupted by one of the locals, demanding to know what Kyle is doing back in town. Kyle tries to be the bigger man and leave, but things come to a head when the man attacks Kyle outside. The two roll down a hill and into a forest, and it seems like the man is trying to kill Kyle, who gains the upper hand and beats the dude senseless, after seeing the Tooth Fairy stalking them from the trees. After Kyle relents, the drunk man looks up and sees the robed figure with a pale white face staring down at him before disappearing. Kyle knows exactly what's about to go down, and makes it to the nearby streetlights just before the man is taken alive by the Tooth Fairy, and she can fly! We see a search party combing the woods searching for the bar patron that attacked Kyle, as he lets out screams in the distance. Moments before the man's lifeless body is dropped directly on top of lawyer Larry, and of course, the cops suspect Kyle of the murder, even though the man attacked him and was dropped from the sky all shredded up. A thrashed and wounded Kyle goes back to the hospital and meets with Kat. They share a moment as she picks gravel out of his head and asks where has he been? What has he been doing for the last 12 years? He briefly summarizes detailing his life after the mental hospital and his subsequent move to Vegas, but quickly addresses more important matters. He urges Kat not to let the doctors do any more tests on Michael, informing her that they will keep doing tests on him until they can figure out what's wrong. But there isn't anything wrong with him. The conversation is cut short by the local law enforcement barging in and detaining Kyle. They take him to the station, and the sheriff believes that based on Kyle's history and the fact that he's taking several antipsychotic type meds, that he's obviously dangerous. Kyle does the smart thing here and lawyers up. The cops throw Kyle in a cell and take just about every opportunity to belittle him and let him know, hey, we don't buy your story, guy. Kat returns to the hospital to be with Michael. We see him sleeping soundly, protected by the light of an overhead lamp. As we hear the telltale whine of the Tooth Fairy's charred trachea, Michael turns over, hanging his arm over the side of the bed into the dark. The Tooth Fairy doesn't waste a second, slashing his arm and shocking him awake. Kat finding him bloodied and in shock, hiding in the well-lit bathroom of his hospital room. Afterwards, a psychiatrist explains that there is a procedure they can perform that could cure Michael. He wants to put him in a sensory deprivation tank, exposing him to his fears by submerging him in complete darkness. Kat asks about the alternative, but the doctor explains that the only alternative would be heavy medication and lifelong therapy, so she reluctantly accepts. Back at the station, Kyle is released, and we see he's been bailed out by Larry. The two walk straight to a hardware store, so Kyle can refill his duffel bag of flashlights flashlights. The other ones were cataloged in as evidence for some reason, and Kyle quickly steals a handgun from the gun counter as the totally oblivious salesman leaves the gun case unlocked. Dumb. The sun is setting on the town of Darkness Falls as Kyle insists Larry take him to the hospital, where we see the doctors are gearing up to put Michael into the sensory deprivation tank, which will definitely kill him. What are the doctors gonna say when they pull him out and he's all dead and bloody? Whoopsie. Back in the car, Larry laments, "Why'd you have to come back, man?" As we've been seeing all along, Larry just wants Kat to chill out and stop having so many problems, so then she'll finally be interested in him. Keep dreaming, bud. He tells Kyle he's not taking him back to the hospital. Instead, since Kyle was released into his custody on bail, he's taken him somewhere to lay low until the charges get dropped. At the hospital, Kat tries to comfort Michael, but this kid knows what's up, saying, "If you put me in the dark, she'll get me." Now driving through the murky night, Larry refuses to turn the car around, so Kyle pulls that stolen pistol. He insists that Larry take him to the hospital, Larry retorting, "What if I don't?" just before some dark huge thing smashes into their windshield, causing them to crash into a tree. Kyle is violently ejected, but lucky day, he lands directly into the beam of the headlight. As Kyle struggles to get up and Larry comes to, they can hear the distant screeches and moans of the Tooth Fairy as Kyle screams, "Larry, don't look at her!" But of course, leering Larry looks directly up at her as she drops down and rips him from the vehicle, screaming for Kyle's help before being dropped back down and splattering on the ground. Kyle jumps in the totaled car and speeds towards the hospital with Matilda in hot pursuit. Yeah, go to the hospital. I can get you and Michael. Couple of peekers. Back at the hospital, the doctors begin the procedure, injecting poor little Michael with some kind of sedative which apparently burns, causing Michael massive discomfort on top of his already intense fear. He trembles as they very slowly begin to send him into the tank, and we hear the moans of the Tooth Fairy. She's already in there waiting for him. Kyle bursts through the door and stops the procedure. Kat agrees, but just as they begin to remove Michael from the machine, the cops once again show up and arrest Kyle as he urges Kat to not put Michael in the dark. Kyle desperately tries to describe to a deputy what's going on, asking him to consider how many children in that area go missing every year, and we get the distinct feeling that this is not an isolated incident. It seems as though the Tooth Fairy has been nabbing kids all along, and only since the once escaped Kyle is returned to help Michael has it really all began to dawn on people that the local legend is true. Just as the deputy confidently calls the sheriff to let him know Kyle is in their custody, the power goes out and the entire jail goes dark. The emergency generator clicks on, providing a minuscule amount of light. Kyle immediately starts panicking and tells the deputy to take a flashlight with him as he goes to investigate the breaker box. The Tooth Fairy swoops in, killing the deputy guarding Kyle. The rest of the deputies return and all hell breaks loose. All of the cops start shooting wildly at the Tooth Fairy, who is flying by the lights and causing them to be shot out. Kyle takes the keys off the dead guy and frees himself, grabbing his flashlights and saving the main deputy just before he's killed. Back at the hospital, the power goes out, and we realize that the entire village has gone dark. Kat gets her first look at Matilda, finally believing her little brother's story. Matilda chases the two throughout the hospital, which of course has multiple creepy abandoned wings, and the two are almost killed by the Tooth Fairy, Kyle pulling them out of the way and into an elevator as he nails Matilda in the face with a flare. The Tooth Fairy snaps one of the elevator cables, causing it to stall out. As some of the hospital staff attempts to help the trio out of the elevator, they look directly upon Matilda's mask, sealing their fate. Kyle, Kat, and Michael make it out of the elevator just in time before it drops several stories, crashing into the main floor with the bag of flashlights inside. Kyle intends to lead the group of hospital staff to safety and brings them up to speed. "You looked at her. If we don't stay in the light, you're dead." As the group make their way to the lobby, the hospital staff are picked off by Matilda one by one, leaving only Kat, Michael, Kyle, and a doctor, who are about to be killed, but are saved when a deputy smashes through the doors with his truck, the headlight beams pouring over the old hag and scaring her off. Kyle and the deputy have planned to take the group to the lighthouse, as it has a gas-powered generator system, and a big-ass light. But the Tooth Fairy has other plans, intercepting them, flying through the air and smashing into the car at high speeds. She takes the doctor before the group once again fights her off. They arrive at the lighthouse and start making their way up, filling the generator tank with fuel, hearing Matilda's angry screams as she stalks them. They reach the top of the lighthouse, but when starting up the generator and flooding the area with light, it immediately shuts down due to a fuel leak. At this point, the group is down to 2 lanterns and 1 glow stick. Kyle and the deputy take 1 lantern and begin to make their way back down to the generator, and they definitely do not have enough light. The deputy tries to hold the lantern towards Kyle as he fixes the fuel leak, but it's just not enough light to keep her away. She snatches the deputy, violently knocking Kyle over, and the dep drops the flammable lamp right into the leaked fuel. After a cat and mouse game between the 3 survivors and the wretched Tooth Fairy, they finally get the generator started, light pouring out over the entire area. But this lady has waited 12 years to cross Kyle off, and she ain't giving up now. She swoops back in, lifting Kyle off the ground, and he kicks the light out. Come on, man. Of all people, how are you gonna kick the light out after everything we've been through? The two struggle midair. Kyle reaches up and rips off her mask. It falls to the ground, shattering as we see it's made of teeth. Ugh. Exposing her horrifically burnt ghost face. Is she a ghost or a monster? At this point she looks like Jason Voorhees, so I'm really not sure. Kyle, finally having enough, reaches his hand into the sparking remains of the lighthouse lantern and fire engulfs his arm, screaming, "I see you, bitch," before giving her the good old flaming right hook to the face. And then she explodes. No, really, she explodes. Now all that's left of her is her shattered, made-of-teeth porcelain mask. After rewatching this, I'm really not surprised this got to me as a kid. Her screeching mixed with her violent demeanor and ghostly white mask still kinda sent a shiver down my spine, though the now very dated feel of the movie definitely deflates most of the tension. Well, that's it for Darkness Falls. What horror movies would you like us to discuss next time? Leave a comment down below and let us know. Also hit that like button and subscribe, as we're new to YouTube and it helps us out a ton. Well, thanks for joining us in the Boneyard. We'll see you next time.